Hey there! Welcome to the Influential Christian Entrepreneur. I'm your host, Francine Sinclair. I've been around the block in the entrepreneurial world, creating and repurposing social media content for experts and CEOs. I know firsthand how it can feel lonely, especially when you're mixing your Christian faith into your business life. So I figured, why should we go it alone? Who said that faith and business can't mix? And that's where this podcast comes in. Join me as we meet influential Christian entrepreneurs who are showing us how to blend business and faith in a way that works. We're here to prove that you can express your faith without compromising your business success. On the Influential Christian Entrepreneur, you're not just listening, you're part of the gang. So let's start this journey together. Welcome to the Influential Christian Entrepreneur Podcast, where we uncover the inspiring stories and strategies of successful Christian entrepreneurs. In today's episode, we have the pleasure of interviewing Corey Swann. First and foremost, Corey is a Jesus follower. He's a husband, a father of 2 young children, and an avid outdoorsman. His professional work as a fractional CMO is helping small businesses with marketing strategy and execution through internal and external resources with the goal to help these businesses grow. A fun fact about Corey is that he and his wife have visited over 15 national parks and counting. Welcome, Corey, to the Influential Christian Entrepreneur. How are you today?
Doing well, Francine. Nice to be here. Appreciate you having me on.
Thank you. So, Corey, you are an outdoorsman. Are you ever afraid of bears?
Not too much. It depends on where I'm at, and because the type matters. Black bears aren't very scary. Grizzly bears are. So it really depends on which ones you're coming across.
Oh, really? Which ones did you say weren't very scary?
Black bears. Black bears are.
Oh, they're not?
I mean, they can be, but not nearly as I guess. They don't do nearly as much damage as a grizzly does. So
as the grizzly, why is it? Is it because they're more aggressive, or are they just bigger, or
both? Yeah.
Okay.
And those are the ones if you come across them between their cubs, the mama can be really defensive or between them and prey. But still, yeah.
Have you ever had an encounter with any bear?
Yeah, with black bears, thankfully. I've seen cubs and the moms, and that's always a fun one. But yeah, they're beautiful creatures. Love them.
They are. I live in Tampa, Florida, and I did not know that on top of the alligators and snakes and everything else we have going on, we also have bears.
Hey, and cougars. You got mountain lions down there.
It was a surprise. There was one in my neighborhood. I was like, what?
Yeah.
I mean, we literally live in Jurassic Park down here.
Yeah,
so we
true.
All things. And so, you do this as a hobby, you and your wife. This is amazing. And you take your children with you, I assume, right? Your little ones going hiking?
Yeah, they've only gone to some of the local ones. We did do a lot of it before. Right now, we're kind of hamstrung with our travels because of how small our babies are right now. But they will be tagging along for a lot of the fun as we continue to raise them up.
How old are they? 2
and 5 months.
Oh, goodness.
Yeah, real young.
That'd be hard, hiking up a mountain with, I don't know. I don't recommend it.
Yeah.
I don't even recommend getting on an airplane with an infant, to be honest with you. I don't know, I remember an experience where my son was very tiny and I took him on an airplane ride and he had a poop accident in his diaper, and changing that diaper in that bathroom was not fun. It was not fun.
That's life. That's life, isn't it? We take it in stride.
Great. So, Corey, tell me a little bit more about you helping fractional CMOs. So explain that a little bit more, because I'm not very familiar with what a fractional CMO is. I'm assuming it's a chief marketing officer. Is that correct?
That is correct. Yeah. And the fractional comes in to help multiple businesses. So with a fraction of the cost as well. So the idea is to give value to small businesses as their fractional CMO, similar to what they would receive from a full-time CMO, but they may not need the 6-figure bill that comes with the full-time CMO, and in addition to they may not need the full capacity. They may be in a state where they're not at the eight-figure mark as a
Right.
business, and so but they still need the strategy, which is where a lot of times if you're hiring agencies or individual workers who are maybe junior and level, that they haven't done the strategy side to help with a business plan and the actual business goals and helping achieve revenue and helping support the sales staff. They might be
Mm.
good at social media or they might be good at email marketing, but they may not be
Mhm.
specific to the holistic view of all of
Mhm.
the branches that come off of the marketing in a small
Mhm.
business.
Mhm. So it is a way when you hire a fractional, you can hire the services of somebody who is at a level that you need to help you move your business forward that would otherwise cost you, over 100 grand a year for a fraction of
Yeah,
that.
often 2 to 4 grand, 100 grand a year is what the average salary range is for a fractional CMO.
Hmm.
Really, I think 368 is the median,
Hmm.
and that's a big bill. So being able to pare that down much smaller and getting strategy and still getting somebody who can lead the full marketing team is pretty valuable.
Hmm.
Yeah.
So
So.
you lead them. Okay. Now, how do you, who are the clients that you work with specifically? Is there any niche that you work in?
Yeah, so marketing, I would say there are people who have specific niches. You can really compare it down into a few different buckets like e-com or B2C or B2B is kind of really the way you can go, but you can get really specific sometimes. I'm pretty agnostic in my marketing world. I help multiple different small businesses. Normally I just try and stick to a specific size, which is about 5 million to 50 million
Mm.
in revenue. Yeah, there's some really high level folks and more or less teams that work with larger businesses. It's a little bit harder in the smaller capacity to oversee. Maybe up to 100 mil would be a comfort level. But
Okay.
yeah,
Because is it because they have to have a budget in order to be able to implement the strategies that, work? Is that right?
absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think just to give any listener an idea, most small businesses should be at least pouring back if they're trying to grow. Around 10% of revenue to the marketing, up to 20%, depending on the industry. There's a lot of information out there for that, but that's kind of where the sweet spot is, somewhere around 10%.
Hmm. And so for somebody who is not at that level and can't hire a CMO, then that's where you have like the solopreneurs and the micropreneurs where they do everything themselves and just
Absolutely.
hire freelancers to do a piece here and a piece there.
Yeah, and that works from time to time, but again, a lot of times, lack of strategy can really be the part that hurts, but
Yeah.
and that it just helps stunt growth. That could be a little more intentional.
Yeah, absolutely. So you are a Christian entrepreneur, but you don't necessarily work with Christian businesses. You can work with anyone. You're agnostic in that sense as
Yeah,
well.
yeah, yeah. And don't get me wrong, I love to work with other Christian businesses, and I have, and it's a great experience. But as I've always said to some of my closer friends too, if we only worked with other Christians, we would never be able to disciple and help grow the kingdom. So,
Exactly right. We'd
yeah,
be living in our own little corner, and that's
that's
not what
right.
we're here for, right?
That's right.
So, Corey, tell me a little bit about your Christian background. Have you always been a Christian? Did you grow up in a Christian household, or did you become a Christian later?
Yeah, I was a late bloomer, as they call them. Didn't necessarily not grow up in a home that had Christ, but it was definitely not a huge part of our life. We were not going to church on Sundays, intentionally with in our family. Not to say that I don't think it was just more of a secular world that I grew up in. And my stepdad was he was raised in the Catholic Church, and as he became an adult, he kind of separated.
Mhm.
And I found it on my own. I was invited to a youth group late in high school, and slowly started to work my way into a relationship with Jesus, and in my faith walk. And it was a lot of ups and downs, a lot of trying to unlearn really hard lessons in the world that we live in, and also continue to grow my path, which was a lot more going to church, still flirting with the
Mhm.
relationship. Like, I don't know if I'm ready to go all in. There's so many worldly things that I have a hard time letting go of, even today, but now, I've really established my relationship with Christ, raising my family in a Christian household, and leading this home, with Christ at the helm.
And so when you were in high school, that's when you kind of found it on your own. And of course, I always hear that in those teen and 20s, it's probably for many people, it's the hardest time. It's kind of when they're like up and down, trying to figure out if they want to go all in or not, and having the heart. And even if they grew up in a Christian environment, that period of time is when usually people kind of, go a little bit astray because they're trying to figure out what's out there in the world. Do you find that people who find Christ later in life versus very early in life almost have an advantage because they've seen it pretty much, they've seen a lot, and they don't have that, well, I need to go see what's out in the world. They are pretty much ready to go all in. Do you find that to be the case, or do you think it doesn't really matter? It's on an individual basis.
Yeah, I don't want to speak for too many other people, but the idea of that is the advantage is to the people who have walked a closer path to Jesus, throughout the majority of their life, just because they are on the more righteous path from the get-go, and they may not have to struggle with the worldly issues that that people who have found it later and have really dug deeper into sin, without maybe not recognizing it, but they're aware of it. And self-forgiveness is a tough thing in today's world. And you have to reconcile with yourself before you can move forward in your path and be able to forgive yourself and seek forgiveness and understand how to move forward. And that's really tough. So
it's really tough.
It really depends on where your walk has gone and what you've done.
You're right. I thought for a minute, well, maybe it's an advantage when you do find Christ later because you're like ready. But I get your point, because once you are older, it's kind of like you have to unlearn habits that you have been so used to for so long, right? And then it's even harder to accept that you've been wrong. Okay.
Oh, yeah.
You've gotten used to living your life the way you wanted to live it, and giving that up and relinquishing a lot of those things, especially the control part of it. We're so used to, we need to control everything. And that idea of, wait, I have to give control to something I can't see. Like, how does that work? If you've been in the secular world for so long, it's really hard. Yeah. And also changing the way you think about things. It's a completely different paradigm.
Yeah, it's really funny you're mentioning this. This is a Monday. So yesterday was Sunday, and in church yesterday, the sermon was on ownership and stewardship, God owning everything of this earth, including everything that we think that we own. And it's our job to steward it. It is not our job to own it and claim it as our own, because everything is just a blessing from him. And so the timeliness of that comment was funny.
But that's the truth. If you see anywhere, anywhere I look on social media, everybody just knows that they know that they have created, manifested what they have. It is our job to control it. So it's all this, mind driven stuff. And so it's the way of the world, and it's really hard to let go of that. I had the toughest time, like the toughest time, because you're like, wait, because when you're in the secular world, the way of thinking is, well, Christians and people who believe in God and all this, they live off of hopium. They don't want to have self-responsibility for their life and to making things happen. So they want to give that to some magical being to take care of it. And voila. And that's how I used to see it. But now that I'm on the other side, I realize that's completely not it. But explaining that to other people who don't believe the same thing is a really difficult
that is the hard part. Yeah. It's, I guess when I look at giving, I think the word I use is unlearning the secular world, the unlearning, like you said, the mind, the self-gratitude, and gratification world that, that really came to be, prior to Christ is just it drives everything. Every decision is almost selfish in nature. Not to say that you can't be selfless without Christ, but it certainly changes the whole idea of when you look at everything as not even your own as the kingdom. That changes the whole conversation.
That changes the whole conversation. And I think it's important that we as disciples, those of us who are disciples of Christ or are working towards that we learn how to use also language, because explaining it is already hard enough, but we need to use common language, because we tend to use a lot of things that just don't make any sense to somebody who doesn't understand.
Bibleese, right? Yeah, the people don't like that.
Christianese, or so many things, and we have to remember that when we are either sharing something or writing something that we know is going to be listened to people who are probably new, probably curious, probably have no idea, to break that down a little bit. I try to consciously make an effort.
There's a reason. There's a reason Christ spoke in disciples. I mean, in parables, isn't it? He really chose them for a reason, and that's why.
To break it down, and he also made it a point to tell someone that you don't have to pray the way they pray at the temple. You can just pray by yourself, as if with your God. You don't have to have all these. That was one major thing for me. I'm like, I have no idea how to do these fancy prayers. I think my prayers don't work because I don't know how to say them like these people at church. Like, they can go on for 10, 15 minutes. At 3 minutes, I'm like, what else?
Yeah.
And so that's interesting to bring up. So now but as far as we're concerned, we're online entrepreneurs. We're in the online marketplace, and all my life at the very least, and in society, we've always been told to not mix religion. People call it religion. I call it faith in the workplace, because you'll offend people or it doesn't look professional. Like, you should leave your personal stuff. It's like a personal thing that you need to leave at home and not bring it. Because I think another thing is that people think that when we bring our faith to work or to the marketplace, it is a divisive thing, because you have people of all other faiths. And when you bring that into the picture, it's creating, friction. So what do you think about mixing your faith at work or in your business?
Yeah. Another one that was a tough one to unlearn, because, from the professional secular world point, as soon as I entered, it's, you leave faith and, so many other things at the door. You leave politics at the door, you leave faith at the door, and you walk in and you live in a professional setting and kind of peel back a lot of even who you are individually. And now that I'm where I'm at today, running my own small business, and being able to be myself, there's no conversation that doesn't stop me from, being able to disciple, if that's the case, or if that's the calling, to pray over people. I often leave a networking call with is there anything in your life I can pray for you about? And that would have never have done that prior to being able to step out on my own and feeling comfortable to do so. And I think that's a really tough spot for people who are in corporate settings or in other small businesses that are not their own, where they don't get to set the rules. And I just encourage everybody out there that is your First Amendment right, first of all, to be able to go out there and be who you are, and you cannot be. You cannot be fired over that. You cannot be, obviously there's tact, and there's a situation, but, look into other businesses. Like, I really like C12, Business Forum, in terms of being able to spread your ministry at work, or Truth at Work is another one. There's just, Faith at Work, one of the two. And those are just some really great ways, and they have really great resources on how to share, the world of your faith walk in the secular world. Business.
Yeah, because I think that for people who work in a corporate setting, it's fear of getting fired or reprimanded, because they just kind of don't know where their rights begin and where, what their rights entail. but then in the entrepreneurial space, it's fear of turning people off and losing business. Right?
I found that opens way more doors than it shuts. And
You
when
have?
you are, oh yeah. I was afraid of that. I really was. I was like, if I put this on everything that is mine, people may not want to do business with me. I found that other people are way more receptive to doing business with me because I'm not afraid to do so.
Even non-Christians, non-believers?
Yeah, I think there are people who I don't know that are Christians until I say that again, I'm outspoken about it, I'm very open, and that they would have never have shared that they were. And then it's a much deeper and heavier, that's a better conversation around what we're doing. And that opens up infinitely more doors. The relationships are so much tighter because of that than they would be if I was just professional, like, oh, here's, a nice email. Here's a nice, talk to me later kind of situation. Those can just go to the wayside. You have a Christian conversation about faith and about discipling and about just walks with your family and all that. That is where I feel like a lot of more business doors have been opened up.
Yes, absolutely. Because there's an additional dimension. It's not just about business anymore, isn't it?
No, we're on the same goal, right? We're all going to the same place, hopefully. So
it's a completely different dimension. And I think that, for a lot of people, because I find that a lot of Christians, like you said, are kind of incognito out there. You have no idea, right? They've erased all of it, at least from their public facing. If they're entrepreneurs, nothing that is on their website, on their page, there is no way to know, nothing that they post until you get into that one-to-one conversation. And they happen to know that you're a Christian, then they come out. But I kind of feel like it shouldn't be that hard, because I think we should be able to identify each other some kind of way. I don't know if it's a secret handshake, but in the virtual world, we can't do we can't do handshakes. So do you explicitly talk about your faith on things that have to do with your personal brand, like your online presence? How do you let people know that you are a disciple? Yeah,
the first thing that after an initial conversation that I leave behind with most of these contacts and networks that I end up doing is a little one pager. And in my one pager, the very first thing it says is Jesus follower, and I don't mind doing that whatsoever. Making sure that people are aware that people. My little boy is actually knocking on my door right now.
That's okay.
I don't know what's coming through. Okay. I don't know if it's getting caught up on my mic right now.
Good.
No, you're fine. So I don't want to hide the fact that I am at all. Even this right here behind me is the chronological history of the earth according to the Bible. So again, secular or not.
People ask you what that is all the time?
All the time. I honestly get a seated chart a lot. I can see why it kind of looks like an amphitheater. But it's the world history according to the Bible. And again, just to let the conversation happen, and that alone normally starts, a fun conversation, secular or not. Even if not secular, but even other faith, can be a fun conversation to stem off of talking about that. Yeah.
And I want to ask you one last question. Do you think that it is urgent right now to spread the gospel? Like, is there a higher sense of urgency right now in 2023, or it's pretty much the same as it's always been?
I think so, especially as an American. I think we've really strayed from what I think was, look at our Pledge of Allegiance, under God, and really across, our businesses where I think we were pretty open to a degree about our Christian foundation. And the more that we've strayed into I think social media and media in general has just really strayed from that foundation, that we're really struggling to find hope. Mental health has never been a bigger issue. People have hopelessness. Suicide is a huge issue today. So all of those, scream to me that people are looking for, for what's missing, the missing puzzle piece in their heart and their soul. And I think that is the Christ foundation, and their relationship with Christ, and knowing that you always have something when your family breaks, when your friends go away, when when all of these things go missing in your life, the thing that is always still there is your foundation with Christ, and your salvation, and the hope for the better life in eternity.
And I think that, we've separated, you say stray, I say we've separated ourselves from God. We have removed them from schools, from everything, right?
Oh, yeah.
And so the more we've separated ourselves, because God doesn't separate from us, we do, the more we are wondering, well, what's missing? Well, the thing you separated yourself.
That's right.
It's missing, but it's such a gradual, right? It's such a gradual process. And you have to think about, many of us weren't here, even born when this started. Okay.
Right.
So it's hard to see where we were versus where we are now. I think that if we were able to time travel and we were able to go back 100 years, we'd be shocked as how much we've removed God out of everything.
Oh, yeah.
In our society.
Sadly.
And it shows.
It's tragic. Yeah.
It shows, but that is why, like you said, it's urgent for us to get back to that. And it's important that Christians, in my opinion, not just use Christians as being a label or, I'm Christian because I believe in Christ. Well, that's great, because I used to think I was a Christian, but that didn't help much, right?
Amen.
Because even the devil believes in Christ, right?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
And so I think what we need to come to understand is being a Christian is not enough. You actually have to be a disciple. You have to be a follower. And there's a difference, and you need to find out what that difference is. Me, as a new Christian, I know that part of that is you have to be in the Word every day. And you have to make a conscious effort to establish a relationship with Jesus Christ and learn how to fine-tune yourself to hearing Him. And I'm not speaking audibly. That happens very rarely, I think. But how to know the difference between when God is speaking to you versus when you're making it up versus when the enemy's speaking to you. That's really important. Those are some of the steps. I know there are other steps, but I'm still learning them myself. But, I think that we don't hammer on that enough, because I heard a statistic, or I read a statistic the other day, that only 1% of Christians share the gospel.
Yeah. That's a bad one. No.
1%.
Well, I'll broach a sensitive subject, but I believe that it's somewhere around 70% of Christian men are actively watching porn. And, those are, when you talk about, I think the term I like to use is walking the walk instead of talking the talk. You can throw a label that you're a Christian, but trying to find the time to continue to build the relationship and walk as close to Christ as possible, to be a model for others. That's where it really makes a difference in discipling.
Exactly. And I think what people forget is that you can call yourself a Christian all you want, but you're not fooling God. And who's the guy who lets you in?
The final judge. The final judge.
So if you're throwing that label out to fool yourself and fool others, thinking you're going to be able to just squeeze by, it's not going to work.
We all struggle, right? We all have to repent, and that's what matters is repenting and trying to grow closer, and being, like I said, 1% better, being 1% more of a Christ follower. That's right.
That's true. 1% better. So Christians, we need to get on it. We need to stop being complacent. And then for those who aren't Christians, the ones who I find that people who aren't Christians, or unbelievers, or probably fell off the faith, they feel like if they do this, I don't want to hear anything. I don't want to see anything. I'm not going to say anything. It's kind of like it's okay because they're just going to be able to be neutral. And that's impossible. You're either with God or you're against Him. He says it very clearly. And there is no neutral. And so that's another thing. I think people are under the impression that it's kind of like the law. You not knowing the law, does not mean that you don't have to pay the consequences for not following the law.
That's right.
Right. And so you can remain ignorant because it is your choice. But that's another thing. I know I'm getting off in all these things. This is what was in my mind this morning. Like, we need to talk to Christians, and we need to also talk to people who don't want to commit to it because they think that if they just do this, they're okay.
That's right.
And that's not true.
Yeah, you're just living up the world at that point, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So didn't mean to be heavy today, but I think we also have to, the skirting around the surface of things and is not getting us anywhere.
That's a really good point, though. I mean, as you say heavy, I don't think, choosing to be a Christian every morning, is when you wake up and to be a Christ follower is not easy. Especially if you came from the world, if you are of the earth, as we all are born that way. But whether you're raised in a Christian home or not, and if you're a late bloomer like myself, choosing, a selfless life is very difficult. Difficult may not be the right word, but it's tough to continue to find yourself going against what you grew up doing. That's tough. That's tough.
It is tough. I have a problem with cursing. Oh gosh.
We all have our struggles. Yeah.
There's a guy, Chris Rickerson, he said when he finally decided to go, he did push-ups for curse words. I'm like, I'm going to have to start doing that.
It took me a long time to break that. I was definitely, especially, middle, high school, college, they came to me freely. It's really tough. That's a really tough one for a lot and it's hard, right? I mean, again, we talk about discipling and being model Christians for others.
Yes.
If we're out there talking like every other secular human, it's really tough for us to explain.
You can't set the example.
That's right.
And it's really riding on our shoulders, because you can't force anybody into converting, right? Mm-hmm. All you can do is spread the gospel. The Holy Spirit does the work. But at the same time, you have to be the example to serve as an inspiration to others as of why they would want to choose that.
Amen.
And so you can't be doing two things at the same time. And that is the hardest thing, in my opinion, especially for someone who lived like myself all my life. Came from a Catholic background, but I left the Catholic Church at 18. But the rest, I dabbled in Buddhism. That was my thing, trying to figure that out. And it was my daughter who told me, I think I started going to a Buddhist temple and taking my children with me. It was probably 2018, 2019. I think it was 2019. It was COVID who stopped.
Wow.
But no, actually, it might have been COVID who stopped it. But my daughter, I remember the last time we went, she was like, because there was a statue of the Buddha in the front and everybody was in there and they were praying. And my daughter was like, why are we praying this thing here? What is it? I'm like, we're not praying. We're just meditating. I'm like, no, we're praying. I'm like, ooh, well, maybe she's right. So it was my daughter and COVID who snapped me out of that. I had been trying to do that for years, but I'm really bad at meditating. So God wouldn't let me.
Hey, talk to us in mysterious ways.
Absolutely. So then what last thing is, what would you say, Corey, to other Christians who may be new or maybe just really kind of like feeling lonely, which that is another reason why we think we should identify ourselves so that we know where we are. And they are scared, other entrepreneurs who are scared of openly professing their faith because they feel that it's going to put a target on their back. They're going to lose business. They're going to be canceled. Any advice that you could give people on that?
One is that I forget the psychology behind it, is as my son is knocking on my door again, 2-year-old.
And I just spilled some water. I was some water in my hair, like, okay, great.
That's all right. One is people aren't paying attention to you as much as you think they are. And so, but at the same time, you can make an impact, with individuals and if you don't feel comfortable doing it in a social setting or even in a professional setting, again, you're protected. You're protected by the Constitution of, if you're in the United States. And then also, you're protected with other Christian brothers and sisters. They will step up and once they're aware of who you are, you have a community right there. There's the other hope is God. That's the ultimate hope, the eternal life, the salvation that we have. And there are men who have sat in prison their whole life because of their professing of their faith. And, here we are 2,000 years later, afraid to do so in a world that's never going to persecute us for professing that. Well, in America, again.
As far as we know yet.
Yeah, true. Right. As of right now. And so don't be afraid. We live in an open-minded society for the most part. And there's always going to be naysayers. There will always be naysayers. So you cannot please everybody, but just remember that your foundation is the strongest that it could ever be.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And of course, God will, the blessings that you will receive for putting your trust in God and Jesus are by far going to outweigh anything that you can lose from the world.
That's right.
It's what I have found out, and I'm happy I made that decision to take the leap and side with Jesus, right?
That's right.
Instead of trying to please the world. So that is my advice to all of you listening here today. And my announcement, as usual, is if you are a Christian man who is a CEO or executive seeking to authentically integrate your faith and your professional brand on LinkedIn by using your personal stories to inspire others, further God's kingdom with your personal testimony, and leave a legacy of faith, let's connect. My email address is hello@francineSinclair.com, or you can find me on LinkedIn. I think I'm one of the few Francine Sinclairs, but my picture will give me away for sure. And I want to thank Corey for being here today and sharing his story, his testimony with us. I try to bring a variety of people on this podcast, men, women, of course, all Christian entrepreneurs, but everybody has a different slant of how they see things and how they do things. And it's so helpful for people who are listening, who want to learn more and how to walk that journey of becoming a Christian, even if you're at the beginning, because we all start somewhere, right? So thank you, Corey, for being here today. Thank you very much. And I want to thank my listeners. We will be back next Tuesday with another amazing guest. Thanks, Corey.
Thank you so much.
Take care.
Mm-hmm.
Bye.
Bye now.
And 2 seconds until it says uploaded.
Cool.
It's still stopping. That's weird. Let me make sure I'm not connected to. Okay. If you're a Christian business leader or executive, I invite you to work with me to create a faith-driven personal brand on LinkedIn that will empower you to navigate the intersection between faith and business. Feel free to contact me directly at hello@francineSinclair.com. I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart for listening today. Make sure to subscribe to this podcast and don't forget to follow me, Francine Sinclair, on Facebook or LinkedIn. See you next week for a new episode.